And this guy knew every single answer off the top of his head. And what would have taken me years to figure out, he just told me off the top of his head in 6 minutes.
That's awesome.
And I still remember when I hung up that phone and I just went, well, that decision's made. Like he knew what my salary should be. He knew everything. And, you know, that phone call, calling some random guy, the friend of my dad's, it absolutely changed my life course.
He went from 21 years old as a breakfast cook at A&W in Fort Nelson. And speaking of that, I had A&W for breakfast this morning. It was very good. And now he owns one of the most popular A&W restaurants in Calgary. That is pretty amazing. So please help me welcome Frank Gardner.
So right off the bat, before we get into our little discussion here, I refer to, he's a friend of mine, and I refer to him by his nickname, which almost everyone knows him by his nickname, not even his real name. I don't think I found it out till like a year into our friendship. So as we go through this conversation today, I'm referred to him by his nickname, which is Bugsy. Cool? Cool. So how me and Bugsy met is it's one of those, fairy tale stories. We were at a bar one night, and this is a couple years ago, and I'm standing at the bar, and I'm all by myself. My friends left me, and he's standing beside me. So, we just start making small talk, and we start to connect a little bit. And then it's one of those kind of things that happens where you're like, hey, we should meet up sometime. You guys ever done that? But you never meet up? You're like, we should, or we're best friends right now, let's meet up. So we exchanged numbers, and one day, like 2 months later, I think, he texted me out of the blue. He's like, hey, what are you doing? And I just so happened to be visiting my folks, and we were in a sailing race. So in this moment, I looked like really, really cool to him. So I took a picture of me like in the sailing race, and like that was who he thought I was. Like he thought I was like this crazy like sailor guy. Not true at all. Just a one-time thing. So anyways, he's like, this is a cool guy. We need to hang out. So the two of us start to hang out, and then one day, I decide like I'd like to be around some people who are holding me accountable to my groups, to my goals. And so I put out this call on social media, hey, I'd like to do an accountability group. Is anyone interested? And he was one of the first people that responded. And through that, like he showed up the first night, we exchanged our tales, and he started telling me his story. And I'll have to tell you guys, like his story is amazing. It's very inspirational. It's really cool. And that's kind of one of the key reasons that I wanted to bring him here today, is that he's got an amazing story. And I think you're all going to be inspired by it, and you're going to glean some great life lessons and some cool habits. So thanks again for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So why don't we just get into it?
I'm going to just amend the friendship story a little bit here. He did send me the photo of him sailing, but my first thoughts were not, this is your life. It was more, first of all, who goes into sailboat races? Yeah. And second of all, who sends you photos of it when you text them?
I was more like the carry-on luggage. Like I was just like sitting there, like having a drink.
Yeah. I'm like, I got to know this guy. He seems interesting. So
awesome. So here you are now, and why don't we'll just kick it off by just kind of telling us what exactly you do, maybe like what a day in the life looks like of your current scenario.
I am a franchisee with A&W Canada, as we said. Mostly, I'm a babysitter. That's my life. Yeah. I think anybody who's been in any level of management, whether it's supervisor, owner, it doesn't change. You're a babysitter for the most part, just at different levels. I answer a lot of emails. I deal with a lot of personal stuff. I'm way past the point of I need to know the day-to-day business. That took me a couple years, but now it's like, it's really about the people, and understanding how people work is way more of my daily life than, flipping hamburgers or anything anymore.
Yeah. And is that something that you think took maybe longer to learn than, just the day-to-day management stuff?
Oh, yeah. It's the hard part.
Cool. So you're now, currently owning one of the, the most popular A&Ws in Calgary down on 17th Ave. And let's just roll the clock back and maybe tell everyone a little bit about where you started and how you came about to be in A&W.
Well, first of all, nobody plans, I think, for a career with fast food.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wakes up or they come to something like this and they're like, goal, own a fast food restaurant. That's not how I started. I was out, lived up in Fort Nelson, way up north there, and I started out in the oil rigs, and I moved to a mill, and I was always out in the cold. It was like, yeah, it was fine in the summer, but I worked there for a couple years, and finally got minus 53 degrees. For 3 days, it was minus 50. We had to go out, we had to work in that, and when I rotated home, I quit. Yeah. I was like, okay, I never want to be this cold again. Yeah. It was just, I was done. So I had a buddy who worked as a supervisor at A&W, and I was like, what's the warmest place I can think of? A kitchen.
Nice.
And I didn't care about anything except being warm. And so that was me around 19 years old. My life goal was to be warm.
Nice.
And I went from making $22.90 an hour to about $8.50 an hour. So
wow, it's a big pay cut.
Yeah,
but at the time you're just content to be warm. It's kind of like you made the transition and that was like Hawaii now.
Oh, it was perfect. I'm watching everybody else come in. It's still 40 below. I'm wearing shorts in the kitchen. I'm like, yeah. Nice.
That's awesome. So making that big transition, you went from $22 an hour to $8.50, massive pay cut. Was anyone surprised, or what? Did they have opinions? What did they think about this whole thing?
Yeah, everybody thought it was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I went from like a union job with all the benefits to minimum wage in a fast food restaurant. So, if you can imagine how people would view that decision. And I definitely, I didn't care too much, but it definitely annoyed me. Mm-hmm. One thing that helped me through was, I was saying this to my dad, that everybody was giving me crap on it and saying I was an idiot and crazy. And he said something to me that I have repeated to so many people over the years, and that's, he said, I've never met a 19-year-old in my life that knows what the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And those were his verbatim words, so.
Yeah.
And I've repeated that over and over, that, you know what, you never really know what you want to do, so make that change, take that risk. If you want to be warm, it works.
Yeah, and kind of go with the flow of life, and not have the idea that you have to know what you want to do, or you have to know where you're going to go, because life changes, right? And did that help you when he told you that? Yeah,
it took a lot of weight off me. Like it made me just having the family acceptance and just figure your stuff out. That was nice.
Yeah, having that backing, that support.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So let's just paint the picture. So you're finally warm. You're content, you're happy, you're grateful because you're warm. You're working in the A&W. What was it like early on? Like, was there any kind of challenges as you transitioned into this role? Anything that stood out for you?
Well, I think obviously one big challenge, which took me a couple years to overcome, is the stigma of fast food.
Right.
To take it seriously as a job, a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And nobody looks at it as, there's a career. Mm-hmm. So that took me probably about 2 years to get over. That was, probably one of the biggest things. Yeah.
Okay, but was there like a moment, because early on you're just trying to be warm, but then was there a moment like where you're like, okay, maybe actually there is a career in this, or maybe I could see myself doing this long term, or I have a future here? Was there any moment or any like pivotal person?
Yeah, the owner, after a few weeks, he came in, and I'm sitting there and I've got the mug washer torn apart, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, it wasn't working, so I tore it apart. And he's like, okay. I'm like, don't worry, I already clocked out, so you're not paying me. And he's just shaking his head at me. He's like, okay, whatever, man. And I don't know what I'm doing. I've never fixed a mug washer. But it seemed like a good idea at the time. And so he pulls me into the office the next day, and he's like, what is somebody like you doing here? And I'm like, I don't know, I like being warm. And that was the answer. I'm like, I don't really know. I don't have a plan. I'm just here. And he's like, well, are you going to stay here? I'm like, I don't know. And he said, if you stay here for a year, I'll train you up to supervisor. And cool. I said, that seems like a cool idea.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what we did there.
Right. And so you're starting to see kind of some momentum or some future in this as he's training you to become a supervisor.
Yeah.
A manager. Where did it all change? Like, was there a point when, when the opportunity presented itself that you made that transition from manager to maybe wanting to be an owner?
Yeah, that kind of came about pretty abruptly around 2.5 years in. I'd worked my way up. I was a good supervisor at that point. I believe I might have been assistant manager. And there was a drastic change, as in the owner and his wife had a kid.
Oh, okay.
And she said, we're not having a kid in this town in the middle of nowhere. We're moving.
Yeah.
And so they had to sell basically immediately.
Wow.
And there was nobody to take up the reins.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was not qualified in any way, shape, or form. I was 21 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. I had minimal management experience. And basically, they're like, hey, does anybody want this restaurant? And I'm like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you have any money at the time to take
no, I had
something out?
nothing. I was broke.
Yeah. $8.50 an hour.
Yeah, so they also told me I bought in at 30% stake, and the bank will front you 65% of that. So I needed to find $65,000, and the bank would front me another $100,000, and I was 21 and I had no money. And of course, you go to the normal places. You go to your parents.
Yeah.
They told me they laughed at me.
Oh, no.
You go to your family. You start asking everybody.
Yeah.
And I did. I asked everybody. And everybody told me no. And then I continued to harass everybody. And I started taking any donation anybody would give me.
Nice.
If I had a buddy with $20, I would write it into my logbook, and I would go, he has $20, and I would write his name, and whatever people would pledge to help me get this $65,000.
Wow. Why were you so persistent at this time? What kind of drive did you have?
It just seemed like a good idea.
Yeah.
I really, it was the thing that I was like, this seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm too dumb to know what I'm doing.
I'm just going to go for it.
So why not?
Yeah.
I will say, looking back, I was innocently stupid. I was in way over my head, and I had no idea.
So ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Made me very successful.
And you didn't have a lot of you were okay with rejection, right? You weren't a person that really gets down on yourself when you
didn't bother
you get
me.
the no.
I went, and it took me about 3 months of asking, begging, harassing every single person I knew, including a bunch of people I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I'd raised about $13,000. Wow. And I had about another 3 months to do it in.
Wow.
And my dad sits me down and he's like, so how much money you got? And I open my little notebook and I'm like, I don't know, 13 something. He's like, it's pretty good. I'm like, I'm not there yet, but And he's like, well, we're not giving you any money. I'm like, you made that pretty clear. I'm like, okay. He's like, why do you want to do this? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you've been doing this for 3 months. Yep. Why? I don't know. Okay, we'll help you.
Nice. That's awesome.
But it was the persistence, and
he probably saw in you that you weren't going to quit. He at that point maybe you had developed some trust for him to make a sound investment in his son.
Yeah, and he charged me 7% interest, which was what he was making on the investments he had to pull. So
nice.
I
Okay.
had
Cool.
to pay back the interest and everything.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So there you are. You finally got the money. You signed the contract. You own this A&W, and then what happens next? You got to tell them the next part.
So I took over on August 15th, and all my back staff walked. Every single one of them.
What percent of the staff is that?
Probably, I would say around 65% of my staff were back staff.
Wow.
And so, I lost everybody all in one day.
And why was that they would?
They wanted to see me fail.
Yeah.
Literally, that's what they told me afterwards, was they walked because they wanted to see me fail. No other reason. And so, I was stuck there on my first day of ownership without a crew. And it didn't occur to me to close the doors, which probably would have been the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But that didn't occur to me. So I started calling everybody I knew, friends, family, anybody who would show up, anybody who had a tiny bit of A&W experience. And I just started promising anything I could and begging them to show up for whatever they could. And yeah, I had a whole bunch of people who had never worked in fast food come down, help me. And we actually had fun with it. Because we all knew it was going to be a massive failure, but we were like just trying and
the
having
expectations
fun.
weren't so high.
We knew it was going to be slow and everything was not going to be well. I was basically just trying to oversee. My uncle came down when he finished work, and he was an auto body man. He's like 50, and he comes down and he's like, "What can I do?" I'm like, "The sink leaks." He's like, "I can do that." So
awesome.
it was really nice. It made it. It actually made my biggest failure. It was one of our greatest days. We had a blast. Everybody had fun.
Nice. That's awesome. So do you think like surrounding yourself, with people who can support you, that's important?
Yeah, that actually became kind of the driving force of how I hired.
Yeah.
It was when the chips are down, who's going to be there for you?
Right.
That is one of my absolute critical hiring points.
Is there any way you can test that or see that, or is that something you just can sense, early on?
You can ask questions.
Yeah.
You can ask that. Tell me about a time where somebody was really hard up and you helped them.
Right.
And see how they react. A lot of people will react positively and they'll kind of smile and be proud about it. Mm-hmm. Some people will be very upset about having to help people.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So.
Yeah, and I guess in the world of fast food too, there's lots of turnover, people going, people leaving. So you need those people who are able to, carry that burden.
Yeah, and no shows, and it's fast food.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you're the owner of this A&W, and you just kind of started to take charge. How many hours were you putting in when everyone walked?
I started putting in, because I had to hire, I had to do everything, and I didn't know what I was doing. I put in, as I said, I took over August 15th.
Yeah.
And my next day off, and I mean this quite literally, was Christmas. And that's because we were closed.
Wow.
I worked absolutely every single day from August 15th to Christmas. I don't know how many days that is. And my weeks averaged 80 to 100 was probably normal.
What was your high score? My
high score was 133 hours in a week.
Whoa.
Yeah. And there's only 168 hours in a week, so.
Yeah. You do the math.
Yeah, I was living at the store at that point.
Yeah. So okay, so down the road, did things change? You didn't have to keep working that same amount?
Yeah, I work considerably less than that now.
Okay. Yeah. So, but the people that walked, did they want to come back or?
Yeah, a lot of them did realize that they had made a very big mistake by just walking out and not having a plan. Some of them did want to come back. I did hire them back because I was really hard up and immediately fired them as soon as I could.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Because obviously I couldn't trust them.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So right off the bat, when you're you're a new owner, was there anything that helped, any habits, any lessons, anything that aided your success?
Yeah. Actually, we were in Fort Nelson because we were from Tumbler Ridge, mm-hmm. and I don't know if you guys know, but it's a coal mining town. The mines had shut down, and my dad's business, Auto Body, basically went to zero.
Yeah.
So we had to move. We had to pack up, move the shop. Dad scouted around, checked everything out, and he wound up moving us to Fort Nelson because they had only one other body shop, and he's like, I can do better work. Mm-hmm. So we started there, and it was very interesting to live through watching us go from absolutely poor and in debt. We were about $250,000 in debt and sleeping on the shop floor.
Wow.
And I think I was about 15 at the time, and my dad 5 years later was retired.
Wow.
So, going from we're flat broke to he's retired in 5 years.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting thing for me to see, because I asked myself, well, what does he have that I don't? And he's not smarter than me. He's not a harder worker than me. he doesn't have anything that I don't, except he has 30 years experience in the business.
Right.
And that's what I realized I lacked knowledge.
Yeah.
And there's no other reason that I couldn't do exactly what he did. And so when I started with A&W, right after he retired, I had something that nobody else starting in that position did. The knowledge that it could be done,
Yeah.
as well as somebody with 30 years experience in business to ask.
Right.
And that became kind of my cheat code. My life hack, if you want to call it that, is I would ask old people. Because it occurred to me that old people have done a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm an idiot 21-year-old, but I know a lot of old people.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been to an A&W, they have a big coffee crowd of old people.
Yeah.
Those old people know a lot of stuff. Buy them coffee, they'll tell you that stuff.
Nice.
And anytime I'd run into a problem that was either beyond me or like I just figured this is going to take me days to solve, I would just start asking people. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how quickly like somebody can solve your problem in 15 minutes that would take you a week.
Yeah.
And it saves you so much time. And that became just kind of the basis of my business strategy was if it was too difficult, ask someone.
Right.
And a lot of times ask an old person.
Yeah, they have the answers. I think we forget that too. Like we see, there's different levels too. Like someone who's older could look down at someone who's young and think that they don't know anything, and someone who's young sees someone who's older and thinks that they don't know anything. And there's so much free information, free resources.
Yeah, I think right now that's a good point. Is there's a massive group of people that there's the war between the millennials and the boomers, and I'm like,
for sure. You're all on my team.
I'm like, yeah, come on. Everybody's got this information. I need it. And so I will call anybody for any reason.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you find out too, like that when you're vulnerable or like when you express a problem to someone, like, hey, I've got this problem. Do you have an answer, a solution? Do you find that develops a bigger, better relationship? Like they're actually now on your team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously not everybody, but
yeah.
I found most people enjoy teaching. Mm-hmm. They like sharing their knowledge.
Yeah.
And mentoring is absolutely, you mentioned the mission in life.
Yeah.
Part of my mission is mentoring.
Nice.
It's improving myself as well as improving the people that I'm bringing up.
Yeah.
If you come to me and ask me for help, that's part of my life goal.
Mm-hmm.
So am I going to say no?
No.
And a lot of people really enjoy teaching.
Yeah, for sure. Sharing their knowledge, their experiences. And then also they probably become more invested in your future because they've aided you, they've given you that information. So now, later on, they're invested. So they want to keep coming back.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay, so we're here at A&W Fort Nelson. Now you're at A&W in Calgary. Can you help us cross that void? How did you wind up here?
Well, I was the small partner in the business, 30%, as I said. And after 4 or 5 years, I had a pretty good idea. I will say after 2 years, corporate came down and they told me that I was probably not good for the job. They sat me down. They had a very professional conversation with me about how bad I was failing.
Oh, okay.
And
was this a shock or an eye-opener for you at the time?
Oh, yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what I was doing. And so they listed these 6 or 7 points, and they're like, you aren't doing this, you aren't doing this, you aren't doing this, you aren't doing this. And I looked across the table and said, well, nobody ever told me to. Mm-hmm. And they went, oh, we didn't think of that. And I said, I just didn't know. And 2 years from that date, I won 4 awards at their banquets.
Wow. So did that drive you, or did they help after that point?
They helped.
Yeah. Okay.
The conversation was great, but that's how big of a turnaround knowledge can be.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they laid out a little bit of a roadmap. So you won the award for A&W Fort Nelson.
Yeah.
And then what happened next? How did you wind up in Calgary?
Well, as I said, I was the junior partner, and my big partner wouldn't allow me to expand at all.
Oh, okay.
I felt like I had kind of outgrown my role, and I wanted to keep expanding. and he wanted me to stay there and make him some money. And so I decided that I would sell.
Yeah.
And so I did. Yeah, it was good timing for me. It was right before the oil crash.
Yeah.
And it was just, I'd reached a point. I had trained somebody up to replace me, and he then took that person and gave them a different store.
Oh.
And I was pretty angry about that.
Yeah.
So I didn't literally give him the middle finger, but it was financial. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
So that's why me and him split.
Yeah, for sure. And then you went off and tried something new, or?
Yeah, I went into Investors Group for 5 years.
Nice.
I did finance.
Yeah.
Which was really kind of my university education.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would call it that. And then A&W, sneaky guys. They never actually canceled my franchisee contract.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Did they know that you would maybe come back, or?
I think, looking back, I feel like, because I was 21 to 26 when I was working with them the first time as an owner. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they had a better idea what I was going to do than I did.
Yeah. Just in the moment.
Yeah, I feel like when I left, they're like, oh yeah, we'll see him again.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you got back into it in Calgary, and you felt some inspiration to make that transition?
Yeah, they came down, they trapped me. Oh, they're sneaky.
Yeah.
I actually, my current partner, Nadia, she had just left her job with Wendy's, and I was trying to get her a job with A&W. I'm like, I'll call some contacts, see if they need a manager. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, we'll fly out, we'll have a dinner, we can talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
And this is me being stupid again.
They romanced you.
And so, we go, we have a beer, we talk about old times, we eat, and he's like, tell me about this girl you got. And I'm like, oh, she's great, she's this, she's that, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, well, if you had a store, would you hire her? In a heartbeat. So if we gave you a store, you sneaky.
Yeah. You're like, well.
I've been set up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they kind of made me some good offers, and
nice.
Yeah.
So how important was Nadia to your current success? Like being around her, having that energy?
Oh, she's been absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
I would not, I think, have liked going through the exact same process I went through in Fort Nelson.
Yeah.
Of rebuilding everything, if I didn't have somebody I was teaching along the way.
Right.
And really, she's done most of the grunt work in long hours, and it's just been me going, hey, you missed a spot.
That's awesome. Yeah, coming in there.
Yeah, no, she's been absolutely critical.
Nice. So just to recap, are there any big pivotal habits that you learned or that got you through some of the initial struggles? I know you hit on a couple there. Any more that you want to hit on?
I think the biggest ones are, like I said, asking for help.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely critical constantly. You'd be amazed at how many people are willing to give their time and effort.
Yeah.
If you're absolutely committed to something.
Right.
And
does that tie in at all to they see someone on their purpose or their passion or following their mission, they see that and they want to help you?
Yeah, definitely. It's been very. I've always been able to rally people to my cause very effectively by making it more than just a job.
Yeah.
That struggle that I went through in the first 2 years of trying to come to grips with the fact that it's just a fast food restaurant, that mentality does not exist in my current store. If you work there 5 days, you realize very quickly that mentality doesn't fly.
Yeah.
It's just a culture shift.
Right. Yeah, creating a culture for success and to inspire and motivate other people.
Yeah, and it's very important, as I said, to mentor and to bring everyone up as well.
Nice. So you talked about something early on when we chatted, not today, but we were chatting in the back, and you said one of the things that you thought was also equally important was understanding your numbers.
Yeah. Like if there's one thing I could give anybody who's trying to do management or business or anything, it would be know your numbers or you don't know your business.
Yeah.
This was advice given to me right off the bat, and if you don't know your numbers, you don't know anything.
Right.
You may think something's happening. If you can't prove it on the spreadsheet, it's not real.
Right.
You may think you're having great days. You may think every day is a 10.
Mm-hmm.
The stats might be that you're living 4 days.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, it's very critical. You can ask me almost any question today about my business, and I know that number either
right.
off the top of my head or I can have it to me within 5 minutes.
Right.
And you have to know that stuff.
Yeah. And I guess like we talked earlier about like how, choices that you make sometimes stem from your emotional state. But when you know your numbers, you understand where you're at, then the choices you make can stem from more of a logical choice.
Yeah, absolutely. One example I'll use recently is, we felt like we were doing fairly well, but then when we looked at the previous 9 weeks, we'd actually lost a little bit of money every week.
Oh, okay.
For 9 weeks straight.
Yeah.
And so we're like, oh, okay, we need to tighten this up.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks, we'd immediately tightened everything up.
Nice.
And we've gone, until last week, we'd gone 11 weeks profitable.
Wow.
And then we had
awesome.
one down week.
Yeah.
But, it's definitely, you may feel like something's happening, but if you don't know the numbers, you don't really know what the story is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're just going to check the time. What's the time at? Oh, we're a little over?
Oh.
Okay, great. We'll just wrap it up here then with, your final takeaway for everyone.
Okay, I would say my biggest take, like if there was something I could give to everybody today, I would say, whatever your problem is that you're facing currently, whether it's business, work, whatever, try and go out today, or maybe with your accountability buddy would be a first person, find 3 people and talk to them about that problem. Take your biggest problem, throw it out to 3 people, and you will be amazed at the responses you get.
Yeah.
And even if they can't solve it, they will direct you to somebody. And I know we're over 1 sec here. I want to make a point on this because at one point when I was offered the manager job before I became an owner, I didn't know anything again. And they offered me a salary and they offered me all these things. And I didn't know A&W. I didn't know if it was a good salary. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So again, I went to my fountain of wisdom, my father. He didn't have a clue. He asked his friend group. They didn't have a clue. But one guy's like, I might know a guy. So my dad got his friend to call his friend who worked with A&W, got the number rotated back to me, and I got a phone number. And I called him, and to this day, I call it the most important 6-minute phone call of my life. Because I had a list of questions, and this guy knew every single answer off the top of his head.
Yeah.
And what would have taken me years to figure out, he just told me off the top of his head in 6 minutes.
That's awesome.
And I still remember when I hung up that phone, and I just went, well, that decision's made. He knew.
Yeah.
He knew what my salary should be. He knew everything.
That's awesome.
That phone call, calling some random guy, the friend of a friend of my dad's, it absolutely changed my life course. So, when I say talk to a few people, I mean it.
Could change your life.
Can.
Yeah, that's awesome.